Hello and welcome YouTube. I just want to do a quick review on this little pot still. So I'm doing I guess what I'm calling a sour mash whiskey in there. But that's not the point of this. There's a million and a half different recipes. I just want to talk about the actual still and do a little review on it because there's not a whole lot of information on YouTube about these things. And I was looking when I was doing some research to buy one, and I couldn't find much. So here we are. Um, it's cheap. It's cheap for a reason. Um, it's the cheapest one you're gonna find. I think that's the cheapest one I found. That's why I bought it. But that doesn't mean it doesn't work. So I'll tell you a little bit about the pros and cons here. Um, the first thing is this thing does work. It's working right now. So I've got my my fermentation stuff in there. I don't ferment in it. You can, but I don't do that. I ferment in a glass jar, a 5 gallon thing, and then I dump it in there, and then I get it hooked up and I start running it. The reason I don't do that is because you'd have to pour it from this into something else to filter your mash before you would ferment it. If you try and ferment it with your grains and stuff in there, you're gonna burn it, and it's gonna be a fucking mess. So don't do that. But anyway, so I ferment in a glass carboy. I put it in here, and then I run it and I filter it before I put it in here. Out of the box, it'll probably do what you need it to do without much modification. The one thing that I had to do was, you'll see these two lines here. One's coming in from the tap. Okay, this is coming in from the tap, and one's emptying into the drain. So right out of the gate, you cannot run this still if it's not close to a tap and a drain. You gotta cool this thing. You have to. You don't have a choice, because there's hot steam coming up, running through that coil, and I don't care how much ice you got, it's just not gonna happen. So I'm lucky enough to be on a well here, and I'm cooling it with well water that's coming out of the tap, and it's nice and cold in there, and that's great. So what I had to do was, these hoses that they provide, it comes with these hoses. It does not come with these fittings to fit onto your tap. It doesn't come with hose clamps or anything like that. It's just two hoses, and I guess they expect you to just I don't know, like run a stream into it or something. I don't know what they. But anyway, I put hose clamps on it, and I made sure that so it's not gonna fall off there. It's not leaking, and it fit into my tap, because that's my water supply. I put a hose clamp on this side. Now it does have these shut-offs on it. It's kind of nice. It comes to a downside. One of the downsides is it's hard to regulate, because you've got to be cooling this coil. So I've got cold water coming in, right, from the well, and then I've got it just draining, and you can see now it's starting to get a little low. And I mean, maybe that's not low, maybe it is. So I'm constantly playing with with this shut-off valve. I don't want to fuck with this one, because if I turn that off, it'll blow, I'll have so much pressure in that shitty hose, it'll blow it right off there. So I play with this one once I get my tap going, to regulate the level. But so what does that mean? It means you got to be on this thing. You can't leave it. So maybe with like a better still, you could set things up with a big cone, and you could a column or whatever they call it anyway, and you could leave it alone for a couple hours and let it do its thing. But with this one, maybe that's what I get for being cheap or whatever, but you got to be on the thing, because you got to regulate this water. And you can see now it's creeping up, so I'll turn that down a bit, so that because if it overflows, then I'm gonna get water onto the top of the pot, and it's not a big deal, but I don't want to deal with a mess either. Okay, so another thing, like the temperature gauge is there. The temperature gauge, I think it works. It's just that it's not. I don't know if it's not accurate, or you just got to figure out what temperature your still is going to start producing at. So had all these notes, and I did some research on what temperature ethanol is going to distill at, and then in practice, it's not exactly that with this still. So, this is my second run at it, and I'm starting to figure things out a little better here. But you're gonna have to play with it, and you're gonna have to figure out, like, despite what that temperature gauge says, that's not gonna be, like, think of it as a rough guide more than anything else, because your still is gonna start producing at a higher temperature or lower temperature than maybe what the textbook says. And in my case, I'm about I have to go about 7 degrees hotter to start producing. So, like, I run it for a while, and I get my heads and my 4 shots out. It's supposed to start here. Let's go see here. I got the fucking notes here. So the 4 shots is supposed to be hold at 168 degrees for 10 minutes. Well, I could hold it there all fucking day and nothing's gonna come out. But as soon as I hit 175, then it starts producing. So I think I'm about 7 degrees. I don't know if my mathematician skills are correct there, but a few degrees hotter, and I hold it there, and then I start really producing at about 180 degrees. Well, it's supposed to be 173, so you can see there's a discrepancy there, but like, it does work, and here we are, and the proof is in the pudding, because we got a half a quart, well, not a half a quart, but we're getting there. And like, the stuff coming out of there, it's tasting all right. Like, it's pretty high test. And this is the second batch I run, and that's the first batch, and I'm aging that in the jar with some oak chips, and it's coming out all right. Okay, get back to it here. So we've got the issue of the water supply and regulating that. The temperature, not great. You have to figure that part out for yourself. The rest of the fittings and stuff are good, except for this. So this is where it's going to produce out of your pipe. What they supply you with is a piece of copper about this long. It's literally enough to drip, over the edge of the pot, which is useless. I mean, what are you supposed to do, So the first thing I did was I just got some solder, and I put an elbow and a 90 degree. So this thing I made myself, and put it on there with a bit of the pipe they provide, and I fit it on there to make a bit of a seal. And then all of a sudden, now I've got this nice long arm that's going to come off, and I can put a jar under there, and it's not right beside the pot that's hot, Anyway, I don't know if that's a safety thing. I think it is. But it just makes it a lot more convenient to collect your liquor or moonshine or whatever the hell you're doing with this thing. All right, so all in all, the thing ships to your house. It's not free by any means. I'm in Ontario, Canada, and I think it was, maybe $300 or something like that, all in all. And that's not free by any means, but it's way better than, $1,000, and it works. And I'm having fun with it. So, this is how I'm doing it. I'm not talking about any of my recipe or how I do any of that part. This is just a couple of pointers and my 2 cents on the still itself, because I just haven't seen anybody else putting anything up on this thing on YouTube. So here you go. Hopefully that helps somebody. 4 out of 5 stars would recommend, I guess, but I wouldn't, I guess, if you're not handy, because at some point you're gonna have to get these fittings. You're gonna have to know enough to put a couple fittings on your tap. You've got to have your stove close to your sink so that you can cool that coil. So I'm lucky enough that I'm right there. I can cool the coil down. It's close enough. And I soldered this piece of copper, so that I can collect easier. If you can't do stuff like that, maybe this thing isn't for you. to be honest. But you know, if you can do stuff like that, you know, maybe it is. If you want to save a couple bucks, not a bad way to get started. And you know what? I haven't even had to fuck with this thing in the last couple minutes, so maybe I got to figure it out after all. Anyway, hope that helps somebody. Take care. Be safe. Have fun.